Records indicate that the Terran Incident was not a mere skirmish or a fleeting anomaly in galactic history. According to surviving data logs recovered from scattered outposts along the Orion Spur, what transpired on that fateful day shattered every expectation the galaxy had of humanity. Even now, centuries later, scholars whisper in hushed tones about the events, as if uttering them aloud could summon the chaos they wrought. I have spent countless cycles poring over fragmented transmissions, translating accounts from species who considered themselves superior, and yet, time and again, they failed to comprehend the human variable. What I am about to recount is not mere legend. It is a synthesis of the most reliable evidence we possess, and it paints a picture of humanity in its most enigmatic, terrifying form. The galaxy had always underestimated humans. Anthropologists and military strategists alike noted that Terrans possessed none of the natural advantages of other species. No heightened cognitive network, no regenerative physiology, no bioplasma adaptation. Their physical forms were fragile, their lifespans short, and their technology rudimentary when compared to the sleek fleets of the Dravari, the Zillions, or the Morith. Yet according to the surviving data, it was precisely this apparent weakness that masked a deeper, unpredictable force. Humans, as the records suggest, were not constrained by the same definitions of survival that governed other species. They did not calculate their choices according to probability or caution. They acted, resisted, and endured, often beyond all logical expectation. The Terran Incident, as it is now known in interstellar archives, occurred near the edge of the Fiery Nebula, a volatile region that had long been considered a safe testing ground for experiments in interspecies control. According to one surviving transmission from the Andovar flagship Virex Solace, intercepted and decrypted centuries later, the initial engagement with Sigma-17 was intended to be routine. The fleet expected compliance, or at least a rapid termination of resistance. What they encountered instead was a display of human tenacity that violated all conventional logic. Data logs describe it as behavior inconsistent with life forms of similar mass and cognitive capacity. Though, as analysts have noted, this was a gross understatement. Terrans refused surrender, adapted to environmental hazards with alarming speed, and utilized their limited technology in ways the collective could not predict. The surviving ship logs record repeated instances of small teams breaching fortified zones, improvising weaponry from basic alloys, and exploiting weaknesses in the collective automated defenses that had been designed by generations of war-hardened strategists. It is crucial to understand that the Andovar Collective approached every military scenario with what they believed was absolute foresight. Their tactics were mathematical, their simulations precise, and their fleets engineered for near-perfect execution. The very concept of chaos was foreign to them, yet the Terran approach introduced a level of unpredictability that simulations could not accommodate. Observers from allied species recorded their astonishment in journals, describing humans as creatures of relentless will and masters of adversity. Entire units of the collective AS infantry were incapacitated not by superior firepower, but by the Terrans' unconventional methods, creating diversions from environmental hazards, manipulating low-grade energy systems into lethal traps, and exhibiting a physical and mental resilience that seemed impervious to injury or despair. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence comes from the fragmented video logs retrieved from the debris of the Andovar Command Center. The footage, though degraded, shows human combatants advancing through terrain littered with plasma discharges, gravitational distortions, and the wreckage of entire reconnaissance squadrons. Their movements were not calculated for efficiency, but for survival and effect, an approach that the Andovar analysts could not categorize. Notes appended to the logs repeatedly used terms like erratic, illogical, and dangerously adaptive, but these descriptors fail to capture the essence of what occurred. Humans, it seems, did not simply act against probability. They transcended it. They did not merely fight. They endured, they improvised, and above all, they persisted. Communication logs intercepted from the Terran colony itself reveal glimpses of the mindset driving this resistance. Though incomplete, the messages convey a collective determination that defies conventional analysis. Phrases such as, "We do not yield," "Survival is our only law," and "Fear is for those who forget who they are," recur throughout the transcripts. Scholars examining these logs note the recurrent theme of intrinsic stubbornness, an almost cultural obsession with endurance and defiance that no alien species had ever displayed on a comparable scale. It is as if humans instinctively rejected the constraints that governed other life forms, embracing a chaotic willpower that became their most potent weapon. The Terran Incident escalated over several cycles of orbital and ground engagements, culminating in an event now referred to as the Feray Convergence. At this juncture, the human defenders, vastly outnumbered and technologically outmatched, executed maneuvers that confounded even the most advanced tactical algorithms of the galaxy. Surviving reports indicate that entire battalions of the Andovar Collective were neutralized not by superior firepower, but by the humans' ability to exploit environmental instability, sabotage energy conduits, and manipulate gravitational anomalies in ways that would later be deemed impossible. Analysts attempting to reconstruct the sequence have described these actions as bordering on prescience, though any suggestion of foresight attributed to humans is likely a misinterpretation. What they exhibited was not calculation, but an instinctual mastery of survival that the galaxy had not anticipated. By the final cycle of the engagement, the Terran colony remained largely intact, while the Andovar forces had sustained catastrophic losses. Communications from the Andovar High Command, subsequently classified as Level Omega, reveal a mixture of disbelief, fear, and grudging respect. The term uncontainable variable appears repeatedly, suggesting that the human's capacity for chaos and endurance was not simply underestimated, it was fundamentally misunderstood. It was in the aftermath of the Terran Incident that many species began to whisper about the chaos species, a designation acknowledging humanity's unique and unpredictable capacity to survive, adapt, and endure against all odds. As I studied these records, the pattern became clear. What the galaxy feared was not human strength, speed, or technology. It was their will. Humans demonstrated a refusal to accept limitations imposed by circumstance, a persistence that defied conventional definitions of strategy and probability. Across countless sectors, in records spanning centuries, the Terran Incident emerged as the ultimate testament to this phenomenon. Histories of other conflicts pale in comparison, for here was an event in which a species lacking apparent advantage shattered the assumptions of the galaxy's most powerful forces. It is no exaggeration to say that the Terran Incident reshaped interstellar military doctrine and instilled a lasting unease among even the most formidable civilizations. In compiling this account, I am acutely aware of the gaps, the missing fragments, and the corrupted logs that may have contained critical details. Yet even these incomplete records convey a consistent message. Humans are unpredictable, resilient, and capable of feats that defy both expectation and probability. The Terran Incident stands as an enduring testament to a truth that many alien civilizations have learned, often at great cost. They may whisper warnings to one another, cautioning against underestimating humanity. Yet the full scope of what transpired at Sigma 17 is likely known only to the survivors and to those who dared to document it. For those who study these events, the lesson is stark. Never assume that humans will follow the rules, never assume they will yield, and never assume that logic alone can predict their actions. The galaxy had expected compliance, a predictable engagement with a minor colony. What it received instead was a lesson in chaos, willpower, and the raw, unquantifiable nature of human determination. And as I pieced together these fragments, Reflecting on the surviving logs and accounts, I'm struck by the eerie resonance of a single enduring question. What is it about humans that makes them so uncontainable, so utterly relentless, that even the most advanced species must whisper warnings across the stars? As the conflict at Sigma-17 unfolded, it became evident that the humans' approach to warfare was entirely alien to conventional military doctrine. According to surviving transmissions from the Andovar Collective, the humans displayed a capacity for improvisation that rendered conventional strategies obsolete. The collective had assumed that they were engaging a species that would act predictably under stress, relying on structured command hierarchies and advanced but linear logic. Yet the Terrans did not respond to predictability. They exploited every environmental variable, every technological weakness, and every psychological assumption with a creativity that was, by all standards, unprecedented. Observers from allied civilizations described it in reports as behavior so erratic it becomes methodical, a paradox that would define the Terran Incident in subsequent chronicles. The initial stages of the engagement saw humans conducting small-scale raids against Andovar supply lines. While these operations might have seemed negligible at first, data logs indicate that their impact was catastrophic. Transmission intercepts reveal that human forces were able to infiltrate multiple supply depots simultaneously, redirecting energy flows, sabotaging defensive turrets, and even manipulating gravitational stabilizers to create localized distortions. One report from an Andovar officer, later discovered in a partially decrypted log, described the humans as entities that turn chaos into weaponry, bending the battlefield itself to their will. What is striking is that the humans achieved this with tools and materials considered primitive by galactic standards. Simple alloys, repurposed conduits, and improvised energy emitters became instruments of tactical genius. Scholars examining the data suggest that the Terrans' genius lay not in their technology, but in their adaptability, their ability to perceive opportunity in moments of apparent disadvantage. Interviews conducted with surviving Andovar officers decades later, recorded in the Galactic Archives of Conflict, further emphasized the psychological impact the humans had on their adversaries. According to these testimonies, Terrans displayed an almost ritualistic disregard for personal safety, advancing into zones of heavy fire, environmental instability, and even active plasma fields, seemingly immune to fear or pain. One officer described an encounter with a Terran squad moving through a collapsing structure while plasma conduits sparked around them, noting it was as though they were dancing with inevitability, impervious to logic and hazard alike. This pattern of behavior, repeated across multiple confrontations, fostered a growing sense of disorientation and panic among the collective's ranks. What was intended to be a routine operation became a psychological nightmare. Humans were unpredictable, relentless, and unnervingly cohesive despite apparent chaos. The environmental conditions surrounding Sigma-17 compounded the challenge. The colony had been established within the Phyrae Nebula precisely because of its volatile nature. Intense ion storms, fluctuating gravitational currents, and unpredictable radiation pockets made conventional operations exceedingly difficult. Yet humans exploited these hazards as tactical assets. Logs indicate that they would intentionally draw Andovar units into ion storms, using the electromagnetic turbulence to disable energy shields and disrupt communications. Gravity wells, instead of being obstacles, were manipulated to create trap corridors that slowed enemy reinforcements and allowed small Terran teams to flank and neutralize superior forces. Analysts reviewing these operations have described them as masterclasses in asymmetrical engagement, demonstrating an innate understanding of environmental strategy that transcended known military science. It is here, in these treacherous conditions, that the true ingenuity of human behavior becomes evident. They did not merely adapt to chaos, they weaponized it. One of the most remarkable accounts comes from recovered drone footage, stabilized and partially reconstructed from damaged archives. The footage depicts a single Terran operative navigating a collapsing research facility, armed with rudimentary energy projectiles and improvised explosives. Entire squads of the Andovar Collective are systematically incapacitated by devices that, according to engineering analyses, should have been incapable of affecting their shields. Each movement of the human operative appears deliberate, yet improvisational, exploiting weaknesses that no sensor array or tactical algorithm could predict. Observers annotating the footage noted repeatedly that the human survival instincts are indistinguishable from strategic intelligence, a sentiment echoed across multiple species analyses. What becomes clear is that Terran cognition operated on a level that combined instinct, innovation, and an almost instinctual understanding of enemy psychology, producing outcomes that confounded all attempts at modeling or forecasting. Equally compelling are the intercepted communications between human units themselves. Though fragmented, the transmissions reveal a complex blend of coordination, intuition, and morale management. Phrases like, "We do not break," "adapt and endure," and "use the storm to your advantage" recur throughout, illustrating a cultural ethos deeply rooted in resilience. Unlike other species that relied on hierarchical command structures and rigid protocols, Terrans appeared to empower individual units to act autonomously within overarching strategic objectives. This flexibility, paired with an innate capacity for improvisation, created an operational tempo that overwhelmed the Andovar Collective, who struggled to anticipate and counter human maneuvers. It is a pattern that would later be referenced in galactic military studies as the Terran adaptive model, a framework for understanding human unpredictability and resilience. The culmination of these engagements was marked by the event historians now term the luminous convergence. Surviving logs describe a massive ion storm, coinciding with the Terran's final defensive maneuver. Thousands of Andovar troops were immobilized by cascading electromagnetic interference, their communications severed, and their energy weapons rendered ineffective. Terran units, by contrast, exploited the storm to amplify their improvised devices, targeting critical infrastructure and neutralizing command centers with surgical precision. Witness accounts from multiple allied species describe a scene of controlled chaos, where human forces moved through destruction with uncanny clarity, turning environmental instability into a tactical advantage. Analysts reviewing these events note that such coordination would have been impossible without a combination of courage, improvisation, and psychological insight, traits that the galaxy had never observed collectively in a single species before. The aftermath of the luminous convergence solidified the Terran Incident as a defining moment in interstellar history. The Andovar Collective suffered catastrophic losses, and their failure prompted a re-evaluation of protocols concerning human colonies across the galaxy. Reports indicate that surviving officers of the Collective issued a formal memorandum, now classified, warning other species about the unpredictable nature of Terrans. According to translated excerpts, the document emphasized three critical observations. Humans operate outside conventional logic. They utilize environmental chaos as an instrument of strategy, and their collective willpower cannot be quantified or contained. This memorandum, once obscure, became the foundation for what scholars now call the Galactic Doctrine of Human Contingency, a framework acknowledging that humans represent a unique and destabilizing force, even beyond the immediate military consequences. The Terran Incident reshaped perceptions of human potential and danger. Philosophical treatises from Zillian and Dravari scholars attempted to rationalize the phenomenon, exploring whether human behavior was driven by evolutionary necessity, cultural conditioning, or some ineffable instinct. While definitive conclusions remain elusive, one recurring theme is clear. The galaxy has no adequate conceptual framework for predicting or containing human adaptability. It is not that humans are stronger, faster, or technologically superior. It is that they defy the assumptions upon which all interstellar logic is built. In every analysis, historians return to the same unsettling realization. The human's advantage lies not in measurable attributes, but in their chaotic, indomitable will. As I reconstruct these events from scattered logs and surviving testimonies, it becomes evident that the Terran Incident represents a paradigm shift in galactic understanding. What was once considered a minor colony became the epicenter of a lesson that no species would soon forget. Humans operate beyond predictable variables, and their survival instincts, when combined with ingenuity and perseverance, yield results that defy probability. Even as centuries pass, the whispers about Sigma-17 endure, forming cautionary tales among military strategists, historians, and philosophers alike. To witness a human unit confronting adversity is to observe a form of organized chaos, a phenomenon that challenges the very foundations of interstellar tactical theory. In examining the Terran Incident, one cannot ignore the psychological dimension. Humans displayed not only physical resilience, but also an extraordinary capacity to endure trauma, loss, and environmental hostility without surrendering strategic initiative. According to post-conflict evaluations, Terran units maintained cohesion under conditions that would have fractured almost any other species. Reports of survivors indicate a remarkable emphasis on collective morale, improvisation, and the ability to turn fear into strategic insight. It is this combination of mental and physical adaptability that ensured their survival and allowed a comparatively weaker force to resist a vastly superior opponent. Observers repeatedly describe this as a species unconstrained by the standard limits of fear and risk assessment, an attribute that has become central to the galactic perception of humanity. The final stages of the Terran Incident revealed the full extent of human adaptability, resourcefulness, and the psychological impact they had on their adversaries. As Andovar forces regrouped in the aftermath of the luminous convergence, they encountered a reality that no tactical algorithm could have predicted. Human units were not merely surviving, they were counter-attacking with a precision and fluidity that made every conventional tactic obsolete. According to surviving communications intercepted from Andovar Command, multiple officers expressed disbelief at the Terrans' ability to anticipate their moves, often describing it as preternatural foresight or instinctual strategy beyond comprehension. Even those who had faced other unpredictable species admitted that nothing in recorded history could match the humans' combination of adaptability, ingenuity, and sheer willpower. The Terrans' counteroffensive was characterized by decentralized decision-making, a trait that confounded the collective's command hierarchy. Where other species relied on rigid protocols and centralized control, humans operated in small, semi-autonomous cells capable of independent judgment. Transmission logs reveal that these units would constantly adjust tactics in real time, exploiting opportunities, responding to environmental shifts, and creating traps from the very chaos around them. In one remarkable instance, a human squad infiltrated a heavily fortified Andovar command node by using a network of vent shafts and improvised gravitational stabilizers, ultimately severing communications for an entire battalion. Analysts later remarked that no known species could have replicated such an operation with so few resources, highlighting the Terrans' unparalleled skill in combining ingenuity with audacious risk-taking. Perhaps most striking was the Terrans' use of psychological warfare, which remains a subject of intense study. Andovar reports indicate that human operatives frequently engaged in actions designed to instill fear, confusion, and hesitation. They exploited the enemy's assumptions, anticipated overreactions, and turned routine encounters into profound disorientations. Logs describe Andovar soldiers encountering Terrans who would seemingly vanish and reappear in unexpected locations, utilizing environmental hazards as both cover and weapon. Observers note that this unpredictability had a compounding effect. Each miscalculation by the Andovar forces was amplified by the humans' tactical foresight, eroding morale and causing cascading failures across multiple sectors. It is this ability to manipulate both the physical and psychological battlefield that distinguished human combatants from any other known species. The environmental mastery demonstrated by the Terrans cannot be overstated. Sigma-17's volatile terrain, with its fluctuating ion storms, gravitational anomalies, and unstable radiation zones, was initially assumed to favor the more technologically advanced Andovar collective. Yet humans did not merely endure these conditions, they weaponized them. According to reconstructed field logs, humans would deliberately bait enemy units into ion storms to disable shields, redirect gravity wells to create fatal bottlenecks, and manipulate ambient radiation to interfere with sensor arrays. These actions were neither random nor purely opportunistic. They demonstrated a profound understanding of cause and effect, environmental physics, and emergent systems. Analysts studying the incident emphasize that humans did not require sophisticated technology to dominate these conditions. Their ingenuity transformed hazards into instruments of strategy. Multiple accounts describe the resilience and morale of Terran units in the face of extreme adversity. Despite sustained casualties, disrupted supply lines, and constant environmental hazards, humans maintained cohesion and operational effectiveness. Personal logs recovered from the field indicate a remarkable cultural ethos. Phrases such as "adapt and endure," "the storm is ours," and "we do not break" recur across multiple units and engagements. This emphasis on collective perseverance, combined with an autonomous decision-making framework, allowed small groups of humans to achieve objectives that should have been impossible given their numerical and technological disadvantages. Historians consistently highlight that it was not brute force but cognitive flexibility and relentless determination that defined the Terran's success. The climactic moment of the Terran Incident, often referenced as the final convergence, represents a pinnacle of human ingenuity. As Andovar forces mounted a desperate assault on the central Terran position, humans executed a coordinated series of maneuvers that neutralized superior enemy numbers. By exploiting gravitational distortions, redirecting energy flows, and utilizing improvised devices, humans incapacitated multiple battalions simultaneously. Transmission intercepts from this phase reveal Andovar commanders expressing utter disbelief, repeatedly referencing the term unfathomable to describe human tactics. Even when confronted with overwhelming force, Terran units displayed cohesion, courage, and strategic creativity that would leave a lasting imprint on galactic military doctrine. The consequences of the Terran Incident extended far beyond immediate military outcomes. The Andovar Collective suffered catastrophic losses, prompting a re-evaluation of interstellar military protocols. Official memos, now partially declassified, warn other species of humans' unpredictable and disruptive nature. Analysts note that the Terran Incident forced a conceptual shift. Human behavior could not be anticipated or modeled using conventional probability, game theory, or tactical simulations. Where other species adhered to structured logic, humans thrived in chaos, converting environmental hazards, psychological stress, and operational uncertainty into strategic advantages. In essence, the Terrans demonstrated that adaptability, ingenuity, and willpower could outweigh superior technology or numerical advantage, challenging fundamental assumptions about interstellar conflict. Beyond military significance, the incident reshaped perceptions of human potential across the galaxy. Philosophers, historians, and xenopsychologists debated whether the observed behaviors were the result of evolutionary necessity, cultural conditioning, or some unique cognitive phenomenon. While conclusive explanations remain elusive, a consistent observation emerges. Humans operate beyond the predictive models of other species. They are simultaneously intuitive, adaptive, and unyielding, exhibiting a form of organized chaos that renders conventional logic insufficient for forecasting outcomes. One Xilian philosopher described the Terrans as a force that inhabits the space between reason and instinct, whose actions are neither predictable nor accidental but a synthesis of both, a sentiment echoed throughout multiple academic discourses. The Terran Incident also highlights the extraordinary resilience of human life and culture. Even in the face of near-total destruction, Terran units preserved knowledge, maintained communication, and continued coordinated action. Surviving data logs reveal meticulous records of battlefield conditions, enemy movements, and resource management. This ability to preserve and transmit knowledge under extreme stress contrasts sharply with the responses of other species, whose data archives often collapse under the pressure of environmental disruption. The combination of intellectual foresight, cultural cohesion, and improvisational skill underscores a unique aspect of human survival strategy. They not only endure adversity, but actively transform it into advantage. Psychologically, the Terran Incident challenged the assumptions of alien species regarding fear, risk, and mortality. Humans repeatedly demonstrated a willingness to confront hazards that would incapacitate other species, from unstable energy fields to hostile environments and overwhelming enemy numbers. Surviving Andovar testimonies emphasized that humans appeared indifferent to conventional measures of danger, instead leveraging every potential threat into tactical utility. This disregard for self-preservation, when paired with strategic acumen, created a paradox that alien forces could not resolve. How could a species so seemingly fragile in isolation dominate through sheer determination and adaptive intelligence? Scholars now refer to this as the Terran paradox, the observation that human vulnerability is inseparable from their strategic strength. In the decades following the incident, the legacy of Sigma-17 became embedded in interstellar consciousness. Tactical manuals, philosophical treatises, and cultural analyses across multiple civilizations reference the Terran Incident as a defining example of human unpredictability. While many species continue to study humans in attempts to understand or control them, the consensus is clear. Human behavior defies conventional classification. They embody a unique confluence of courage, ingenuity, resilience, and strategic improvisation that renders them both feared and admired. The lessons of Sigma-17 are no longer confined to military analysis. They have become a touchstone for understanding the limitations of predictive logic when faced with a species capable of transcending assumptions and exploiting the very chaos that constrains others. Finally, as I reflect on the Terran Incident from the vantage point of historical reconstruction, the overarching narrative emerges with clarity. Humans, in their unrelenting pursuit of survival and mastery over their environment, demonstrated that conventional metrics of strength, technology, and numerical superiority are insufficient to account for their capabilities. Their actions at Sigma-17 serve as a timeless reminder that adaptability, creativity, and indomitable willpower can rewrite the rules of engagement and challenge the assumptions of entire civilizations. According to all surviving records, the Terrans did not merely survive, they redefined what it means to confront adversity, transforming every obstacle into an opportunity, every hazard into an instrument of strategy, and every impossibility into a testament of human ingenuity. As the galaxy continues to expand and record events of historical significance, the Terran Incident stands as an enduring symbol of human resilience and unpredictability. It is a story that compels scholars, strategists, and philosophers alike to re-evaluate assumptions about life, intelligence, and survival. To observe humanity in conflict is to witness a species that thrives not by adhering to logic, but by embracing the chaos, turning vulnerability into strength and uncertainty into opportunity. The humans of Sigma-17 did not merely endure, they transcended, leaving a legacy that continues to unsettle and inspire the galaxy in equal measure. According to surviving data, this incident will be studied, referenced, and marveled at for centuries. A singular example of what a species driven by willpower, adaptability, and creative resolve can achieve against insurmountable odds.